God calls me to give to my church at the 10% level. For me, that's just kind of something that's settled in my heart. It's not something I would ever tell somebody they need to settle there too, because I don't think it's clear. I think Jesus came to give a lot of freedom. And so I want to respect that for other people. But I think there's a calling on the church to be responsible for that. I think there's actually a calling on me to be responsible for giving above that.
Welcome, Greg. Appreciate you doing this shortly after tax season, and hopefully this will help de-stress you. Uh,
Absolutely.
Speaking of tax, I mean, you're a tax strategist, so you own Taylor Tax Strategists.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I guess my first thing is, I think you're the only tax, quote unquote, tax strategist I've ever met in person. What is a tax strategist versus just a normal accountant or CPA or anything?
Yeah, so I often get asked by people, what is the biggest piece of tax advice you would give to a new business owner? And I always say, know the difference between a tax preparer and a tax strategist. A tax preparer is going to prepare your taxes. They're going to take the information you give them at the end of the year and they're going to put it on the tax forms. And they're maybe going to ask you a couple questions or check about a couple things to see if you did something that might save you money. For example, they might say, did you buy any clean energy products, whether a vehicle or solar or whatever. But a tax strategist is going to be somebody that you're checking in with throughout the year, and they're going to say, "Hey, you have a profit, and we need to find a way to get rid of that. So let's put solar on your house, or let's look at a clean energy vehicle, or let's look at investing in real estate, so on and so forth." And so, a strategist is more of a proactive, and a tax preparer is more of a like, "Here's what happened this year, and we're gonna do the work." And then a lot of them will give some suggestions, kind of wrapping up for next year, you could do this. So, not criticizing, it's just kind of a different role. So,
How do you learn one role versus another? Is it just more OJT or is it, I mean, you go to school all for the same things, correct?
sure. So a lot of it is on the job training, like you said, but there are different credentials that you can get, different things like that. For me, I have chosen to focus pretty strongly in on specific niches. So basically, real estate investors and blue collar workers and blue collar business owners is where we typically stay. And so that has allowed us to focus in on those. I'll have people come up to me that I had a guy come up to me and he does drop shipping and he was like, "Hey, can you help me?" And I was like, "We can do your books, we can do your taxes, and I can give you some basic strategy, but I don't know drop shipping." So I don't know the ins and outs, of that specific business. So I think it's more the on the job and frankly picking a niche that's really going to work for you. Now the bookkeeping, I can do that for any company. That doesn't matter. I can do the tax prep for any company, but that strategy, you really need to know the types of businesses that you're working with.
Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of nuances. For example, businesses that have a lot of inventory, there's some different strategies related to first in, first out, last in, first out, all those kind of things with your inventory and how you manage that. And that's just not something I get into. Like, I honestly don't even know all the different options for how you would record inventory on a tax return because we aren't in that realm. Our inventory for most of my clients is either those parts that are just being used up all the time, like if it's a plumbing company, they have pipe or fittings or whatever, or it's real estate investors who are flipping houses, and those we're trying to get out as fast as we get them in. So, in both of those instances, it's just not the same. And so, there can be other nuances based on maybe credits that are available for certain industries or things like that.
What are some of the light bulb moments that you have when you're working with real estate professionals where they didn't realize that they should be doing something?
Yeah, I think a big one that a lot of people don't realize about is cost segregation studies. I think you guys have probably heard of those, but they're pretty amazing tax strategy that you can implement. And then there's a couple of nuances to those. So, for those who don't know or haven't heard, a cost segregation study basically allows you to, instead of saying, "I bought this property and I'm depreciating the whole thing over 27.5 years if it's residential, or 39 if it's commercial. You say, I'm breaking it up. I didn't buy a property. I bought a roof and walls and flooring and plumbing systems and on and on. And then you're able to depreciate certain things at faster periods of time. So you get more of that expense up front, which then gives you more of a paper loss to offset other income. And there's some bonus depreciation right now where you get to take a bigger percentage on the first year. We're hoping that goes back up to 100%. It's been slowly trickling down over the past couple years, but hopefully the one side of Congress has passed it. Hopefully the other side will, and we'll get it signed by the president and get back up to 100% bonus depreciation. Another thing that with the cost segregation, you don't depreciate land. So I have a lot of clients who are surprised. Like I had a client a couple years ago. They bought a beach house for like 3.5 million, and they were super pumped, going to write off 3.5 million. But a house on the beach, that lot is maybe 2 million of that price. So they didn't have near the depreciation expense that they were hoping for, because the land value is not depreciable, and we have to subtract that off before depreciating calculations.
So, do you have a general rule of thumb for cost segregation study? One being what the estimated percentage of the acceleration would be in year one, and then also a rule of thumb for how long you should hold a property after doing it to avoid the recapture?
Yeah, so well, you're always going to have recapture unless you do a 1031 or unless you pass it on to your kids because you passed away. So otherwise, there will be the recapture no matter what. But as far as rule of thumb for how long you should hold it, I would say at least 3 years, preferably 5, to make it worth it, because you're paying for the cost segregation study, and then you're going to have that depreciation recapture or have to do the 1031 to avoid it. Um, and then cost wise for the cost seg studies, they're anywhere from 1 to 3% of the purchase price or the all in price typically. So they're not cheap. So you want to make sure that you're going to be keeping it and actually getting that benefit for a while if you're going to be paying for it. Obviously, the fees for the study are deductible as a business expense, but you don't want to just do one and then the next year sell it or something like that. It just wouldn't be worth it. So and then the amount of depreciation currently, I'm telling people it's in the 15 to 20% of the non-land value that you have into the property. That could go up to 30 or 40 if the bonus depreciation goes back up to 100. So you can get a pretty significant amount the first year. So
What is it if that law doesn't get passed this year? What's the is it 40% this year or something?
40% this year, that's right, and then 20% next year, and then it'll be back to just regular. But even at regular, it's still a bonus. So let's say you have $1 million property, and 20% of your stuff is 5 years. Well, that's 200,000 that you're then dividing over 5 years. So that's a significant portion that you get to accelerate the depreciation on, even without the bonus. So
So still front loads everything.
Yeah, so it's still not a true 0%.
exactly. It's just being able to take. So if we were at 100% bonus in that scenario I just gave, the whole 200 would be taken in year one, but instead you would take that 200 over 5 years. So
Yeah. You another part?
No, I didn't know that part. I thought the acceleration had to do with the percentage of that
Yeah, it's just
allowed. Yeah,
whatever the schedule is, the 5-7, 3-5-7,
exactly.
whatever.
Yep.
right.
Mhm.
So yeah. It's funny you mentioned a lot of this stuff. My mom's an accountant, or was an accountant, retired accountant. And so buying a plumbing business, I've been asking her a ton of questions. And she's like, how are you about to finish your MBA in finance and don't know basic accounting? She's like, you need to go buy Accounting for Dummies book. I said, I already have it. So I started reading it. And a lot of the stuff with the first in, first out, last in, first out, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just actually read all that yesterday. So when you're saying,
Okay.
no, I don't even know how many there are. I was like, there's 4. There's four different
Okay.
methods.
All right. Cool. Cool.
But
I bet there's
yeah.
some other ones too. So out there.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure
those are
there's some
probably the
hidden,
four
but
main
there's 4 main
components.
ones that they went
Yeah.
over. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny.
That
My
makes
mom was
sense.
making fun of me for all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
think it's just so important to focus in. That's just what I've learned in business. And even, as my company grows and you bought this company, and so to focus in on what you're good at, what the way that you can actually make the impact in the company and help it grow, because you cannot be an expert at everything. So
yeah, it's the biggest thing. So let's talk about your company. So you're mostly remote, correct? Like most of your employees are remote. So what's some struggles with doing a mostly remote company?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones has actually been related to our purpose, because one of our purpose statements is that we give and go to the neighbors and the nations. So we want to make sure that we are giving of our time and our money to those locally who are in need, both to hear the gospel and physical needs and all those things, and then those globally who have those needs as well. And so we have as one of our key purpose indicators that we are going to do a company project or some kind of like give back once a quarter, but we're not all together, right? Like I have people in Maryland, I have people in Texas, Florida, North Carolina. I'm in Kentucky. There's a couple others of us in Kentucky. So we have people, throughout the country. And so we can't like it's just not practical and people probably don't want to fly into Louisville or somewhere else, once a quarter just to do a give back. So we've struggled a little bit honestly with how to do a give back that the whole company can participate in. But we have found some other things to just connect as a company. So everybody's super comfortable with Zoom. We hop on Zoom meets, or we actually use Google Meet a lot, but for internal. But we hop on those multiple times a day. It's basically a chat on Google Chat. Hey, you got a minute? And you send the Google meeting link with the chat, and you just hop in and chat about stuff. So that's been really good for us to be able to just kind of stop by each other's offices. And then on Thursdays, we actually have a half an hour coffee time that anybody on the team who wants to, if it's paid time, but we all hop on and can just chat about life. So normally talk about weekend plans or what's been going on, stuff like that. And it just gives us some time to kind of be together and chat about stuff. And then
Completely not work.
yeah, we're not talking about clients or anything. We're just, having our coffee and whatever, and chatting about life and what's going on, sharing pictures of our kids, or whatever, like share screen and take turns doing that, or just updating on life stuff. And then we have done, everybody was invited into Louisville. We paid for everybody to fly in for the Christmas party. And I think we'll do that again this year. And then we hosted it at my house. Um, and I like that. It is expensive, but we're not paying rent. We're not paying a mortgage for office space. So, it's kind of just the offset of that, even if it's, 10 grand or whatever, I'm not paying rent all year. So I can put it towards that. So
I think it's important what you're saying about having those coffee sessions and what it does for the culture in the company, and as a business owner focusing on the people first rather than every second that's going by is, if they're not working, I'm losing money. So
yeah.
I mean, how has it been shaping that culture in your company?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that generosity is one of my core values and very important to me. Just giving, that's actually one of the ones in our companies is giving, and so I hopefully am modeling that. I hear from my team that the leadership is modeling that, and I'm very grateful for that. And so I think just not really being super concerned about that is helpful. We do, I mentioned just last week it was me, the COO, and the CAO, our chief accounting officer, on a call, and I was like, guys, this is the most expensive hour of the week because the three of us are the three highest paid people. So we do not need to just be sitting here like, talking about random stuff. Like, let's get this done and so, I do say those kind of things too, but we also have our time, that we get to connect and things like that as well. So, and then another thing that has made it less stressful for me, and I shared some of this with you, Ryan, I think when we were in Cancun, about just having an enough number in my life. So my wife and I have a top amount that we live off of. And then anything beyond that is money that we can be generous with, either to our employees or the community, the church, whatever the needs that we see are. So we can invest in the business, any of those things. So.
And so how did you come to that number? I mean, was there logic, or was it an arbitrary number that you guys just agreed to?
Yeah, so frankly, it's a very generous number. Like I don't want to make it sound like we took a vow of poverty or something because it's not that, but but it's it's something that we prayed about. It's very generous. It's totally enough to live off of and be able to invest and grow wealth and things like that. And prayed about it, thought about it, looked at our budget, looked at our priorities, our giving goals, our investing goals, and kind of just came to a number there. So I do think that number should change too as life changes, right? So if we were praying about it and decided that both of our kids needed to go to a full-time private school that was 30 grand a year, then we would have to increase our enough number to absorb that, right? And so I don't think that God's calling us to that, for the record, but just those type of things. Or when our kids move out of the house, like when they're grown and they're on their own, then I think the number goes down. So
Hmm.
Oh, so your kids are test my 12 and
that's your
9 or something.
memory. Yeah, they're close enough. 13 and 11. So
Close enough. I was
yeah,
in the
yeah,
ballpark. I knew they were
yeah,
right around my kids' age. I just didn't
yeah,
remember.
yeah.
You're older, you're younger, so
Yep.
yeah. And so you came to this number, and then you basically give out everything above that. Is
Yeah,
that
it's
correct?
either reinvested in the business, shared with employees through, our gift giving, or like during tax season, like the day before, every tax preparer at our company got a basket and a gift card, just like, hey, we know you're in the trenches. This is a really really tough time. So, just being mindful of those things that we can do, especially since we're remote. And then we spend a lot of money on marketing, we spend a lot of money on travel and networking and things like that too. So it's not all, we're growing a business too, right? So it's not all just like giving it away, but and then being generous with those organizations that matter, that are really supporting kingdom growth, is really important to us as well. So
I think it's really important what you're saying is that you are still investing in your business and you're not just, going around handing out $1,000 every time you go to Walmart.
right.
But I do think that it's important that you guys had that conversation ahead of time, because the whole idea of the enough number is that you stop striving for I'll be happy when, right? I'll be happy
Yeah,
when I have 100,000 a month. I'll be happy when I have $1 million a month. And you realize that you just keep moving that goalpost. And having that enough number, I think, is a conversation most people don't have, especially starting a business when it's all about grinding and just getting through it. And it's gonna be so nice when we're successful, but it's equally as difficult to have that conversation and the restraint once you are successful,
yeah,
and having the discipline to say, we've got more than what we need. Like now it's time to give back. And I believe that
right.
God rewards that more than the greedy one who says, oh, I'll keep giving 10% and, just keep giving me more and I'll give more.
Yeah, and that's one thing I guess why I connected with Greg's, because I noticed that you were giving with what you were given. And you know one of the first stories I think I remember you saying was that you moved to, I forgot exactly where you lived before, but you moved to Kentucky to basically plant a church or help plant a church. Like you're not the pastor or anything like that, but you that was on your heart to help the church and move forward with that. So I mean
Yeah,
that's
yeah, we moved to Louisville. My wife and I, we weren't even married at the time, but we in college, this guy came and spoke at our college ministry and said, "Hey, if anybody's looking for a job after graduation, look in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're planting a church there, and you can come be a part of it." And kind of we had some other friends from college, and we all were just like, "Sounds like a fun adventure." So we kind of just looked for jobs and moved here. So there were other reasons, I was considering seminary here in Louisville as well, and some things like that. So yeah, so it's been really fun. It's been a fun ride. We've been, going since 2007 now, and a couple of others of us that started. We have, you guys have maybe heard this term. It's a poker term. We say we're pot committed to the church. So, we've put so much into it, we're not leaving. So, yeah, so that's kind of where we are with that. So,
yeah. And another thing, and we kind of talked about this before, but one of your financial goals is basically be able to help continue growing the church, and not only in your employees, but also in the church and the community that you reside in, that you want to plow back in and continue to be able to make sure that the church is taken care of and their immediate needs, I guess, are taken care of. And that's one thing that's been put on your heart is to do your part as much as you can to help out there.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah, we have some big dreams. We're, considering and trying to find a place to build our first building. It's been 18 years. We've rented for a long time from actually a private school or like a Christian school, and it's been great. We love that setup. But someday, we think the Lord would call us to plant roots in a specific area of the city and be able to minister to people there, that are our neighbors, there in that community specifically, or neighborhood. And so, just I think it's a really fun dream to think like, hey guys, how much is this wing of the church going to cost, or how much is all of the lighting and sound and electrical through the whole church? All right, I'll take care of that. Like that sounds really awesome to me, and so I would love to be in a spot to do something like that, when the time comes. And so, yeah, those are fun dreams.
be the Greg Taylor wing.
No, I've actually said before to them that if my name's on it, I'm taking my money back. So I've since or I'm quitting. If it's a service thing, I'm quitting. If you so I want the Lord to see it, and I just feel like, I know that I struggle with my image, and so I don't want to feed that struggle by having my name attached to it. So yeah.
I got a couple questions on the tithing side. Um, I mean, one is, what is your philosophy on tithing, and do you think that it's an obligation or it's something that, I mean, the Bible calls us to be joyful in giving in your tithes and offerings. And so I've heard some people say that, the tithe is a non-negotiable. You got to do it. And if you want to give more, then that's an offering. And that's where you need to be cheerful. And then there's the conversation of, well, if it's an obligation, then some people just put it on auto pay where 10% goes. And I get that that's, a good resource to have. But I think that it becomes mindless and you're not giving with your heart. So for me, I have to manually go in and make the active decision to go deposit 10% of my check, because to me, it's like a conscious decision. What's your philosophy on the tithing?
Yeah, that's a good lot of good questions and thoughts. So I've went back and forth personally a couple different times. When my wife and I first got married, I wrote the check and she put it in the box so that both of us were active in it. And that was really cool. I really like that idea. We don't do that anymore. Now it's an auto pay on my credit card that I did through the app of the church. So complete opposite, right? Like neither one of us think about it very much. And so I think that I think that there's a benefit to, being mindful. I also think that, like we talk about sacrificial giving, right? And that whole idea. And frankly, I think as you grow in your income and things like that, like a tithe just isn't sacrificial anymore. It just isn't. Like, let's be honest, right? Like, it's not changing your life in any meaningful way. And I actually have talked to my friends about this, like, just my two closest friends, we were all talking one day, and I was like, guys, I don't really feel like I'm sacrificial in my giving. Like the dollar amount might be more than it ever has been in previous years, but what am I sacrificing? Like I can't think of a single thing that I'm really actually like, okay, I waited an extra month to get my car, like when I need, because I wanted to save up a little more. And if I wouldn't have given quite so much, I could have got it a month sooner. That's not a sacrifice. Like that's, it's just not. So thinking about that has been interesting. I'm also pretty convicted, I think, and I don't know that I can stand on this biblically, but this is just kind of a personal conviction, I think, a little more, that God calls me to give to my church at the 10% level. For me, that's just kind of something that's settled in my heart. It's not something I would ever tell somebody they need to settle there too, because I don't think it's clear. I think Jesus came to give a lot of freedom. And so I want to respect that for other people. But I think there's a calling on the church to be responsible for that. I think there's actually a calling on me to be responsible for giving above that, and where the above that goes. And so I'm pretty careful with my giving. Like if there's not results that are impacting the kingdom, like I won't just keep blindly giving forever. Like every charity and every missions organization is not created equal, right? Um yeah, so there's kind of that's where I think the consideration, I guess, and the really thinking about it comes in for me is the tithe is just kind of a regular thing. But then beyond that, directing other dollars beyond that is very purposeful and intentional. So we have some family goals that are actually on our fridge right now that we've written down, giving goals. And so we want to save up a certain amount of money so that we have a giving fund so that anybody in our family, the four of us, who thinks about something that is a need or hears about something, has the opportunity. Obviously, our kids within reason, right? They can't give the whole giving fund to their friend, but within reason, there's a thing that we can all kind of be able to give and be generous with. So
I like that a lot. Well, I think for the second part of this question, I think you're the perfect person to ask because when it comes to being a cheerful giver and a sacrificial giver, do you think finding nonprofits or anything that is a tax write-off then impedes on the cheerful or sacrificial giving? Or is it a responsible thing to do with your money?
yeah, I mean, I think it's responsible. I think the parable of the talents tells us that the Lord expects us to be responsible, and invest the things that He's given us and be good stewards of those. And if you can have more of those to be generous with, then I think that's the right way to look at that. So I do respect people. I have some people who don't, that are clients of mine that they don't deduct anything on their giving from their taxes. Or I know some people who they don't tithe off of their check, but then they do tithe off of their tax refund. So basically whatever they bring home is what they tithe off of. And then other people say, oh, do it off of your net pay before anything comes out, because that's really what God gave you. And so I think a lot of those things can really come down to personal convictions. But in my mind, we we can trust the Lord to be in control and sovereign over things as they happen. But I also think we have a responsibility, and if we can redirect funds to the kingdom and away from the government, and that's legal, I don't think that's a bad plan ever. So
Amen.
Love.
How do you talked about your kids and family goals on the fridge. How do you bridge that conversation with younger kids, that they don't become egotistical in what you bring in and stuff like that? Because that's one of my biggest struggles is
yeah,
that.
yeah, we're pretty. I mean, I don't know if we're more open than a lot of families, but our kids, have a pretty decent idea of what our life is like, and what we're giving to, and things like that. We're pretty clear with them that this isn't, you don't just go around like saying all these things to your friends or everybody else, but we're fairly open, I would say, as a family about what things cost, and how we're working, and things like that. I think a big part of it is, if there's one thing I feel very confident in life about, it's that you can either be intentional or life's going to happen to you, right? And so for us, we've just chosen to be intentional with our kids and try to teach them or model intentionality when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I have 7 kids, and that's something I definitely struggle with. Is I want my kids to feel like anything is possible and opportunities are endless, but I don't want them to become so attached to the dollar that they wind up idolizing the money more than they realize it's just a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is really hard, right? And I have some stories that I could share. Like we were going on a trip. It was a really fun vacation, and my kids were like, "What? There's no screens on the plane?" Like, it's just like the sound of some of those things is just it can grind at you, I guess, a little bit, or just be like, "Oh man, am I spoiling them too much?" Um, so I think it's really important for them to see. So we did a family mission trip last year to Cuba, and our kids got to see what a lot of the world lives like, and what they have and don't have, and just reminded them then of what what they have and the blessings. This year, my wife and son are going to go on a week long home building and community building trip somewhere else in Kentucky, like Appalachia area, and just serve, the community that doesn't have as much. And so, just being intentional to expose your kids to those things. My daughter and I will do something different during that week. You have to be a certain age to go on the trip, so they're going to do that. My daughter and I will do something different. But yeah, just making sure our kids are able to see that, I think is really important. So yeah, I think modeling that is really important, and then being able to participate with your kids in those types of activities where they can see that. Also, my wife and I have been really wrestling with lately, like if we should just look at areas that we should just say no to them for things that they want or need, or not need, but like that they feel like they need, I guess is the right way to say it. Or choosing to eat a meal that isn't like as pleasant. Maybe we're gonna have chicken and rice tonight, which I like, but some people, especially my kids, don't always. But as opposed to going out, to dinner. And so I think just choosing those types of things can be really impactful to our kids.
Hmm. So you talk a lot about making decisions after praying with your wife, which I think is amazing, and more people need to do that. So how does God respond to you, and how do you know what his answer is when you're at a crossroads?
Sure. So just so I'm not giving the wrong impression, I don't pray with her near as much as I would like to. It's fairly seldom, I must confess. We both pray about it. We talk about things together, and we both pray. But normally that is just so I'm not saying that I pray with her every night or something. I want to be clear on that. She really values accuracy. I could let things slide like that, but she really values accuracy. So but yeah, so praying about it, just really, really thinking about the principles in scripture. I mean, there's so many principles in scripture that are just, abundantly clear as to the direction you should head in. I'll give an example from recently in our life. There was a scenario with one of our family members where potentially he needed a place to stay and was going to be orphaned. And it ended up working out differently, but we were asked, and really, frankly, the only people in the family currently who would be a good fit, um, we were asked to take him in. And for both of us, it wasn't really even like a question. It wasn't, do we want to have another kid? That wasn't the question. It wasn't, do we should we do this? That wasn't the question. It was, the Bible says that you care for orphans and widows. And the Bible says that if you can't take care of your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. So like there's not really any question, other than logistics and like figuring out, and so having some of those principles makes things a lot easier to just kind of think through. Now, were we excited about the idea of going back to being empty nesters 7 years later than we were originally expecting? That wasn't exactly exciting, if I'm being honest, right? We were, kind of on a track and had expectations, but this was the need that came up, and there is not a biblical reason to say no to that for us. And so, you know, we would take him in, love him, and we do love him. He's my family already, but that's just there's I think a question of like, should we adopt kids? Is that what God's calling us to? Like generally, that's a different question, right? But this was something that the Lord orchestrated and placed in our lap. And so sometimes I think we try to pray about stuff that we don't need to pray about. We already know the answer. We just need to follow what the Lord has called us to. I'll give one other example. When we were first starting the church, I was running the sound system every week at church, and there was a guy who had a degree in sound engineering. So, like, he went to college to run a soundboard, basically. And I was like, "Hey, man, I need you to start running the soundboard sometimes at church, so I don't have to do it every week." And he was like, "All right, I'll pray about that." I was like, "No, I don't need you to pray about it. I don't need you to ask the Lord if he wants you to. I don't need you to be happy about it. I just need you to do it at least twice a month. You can tell me you hate it every time, but you just need to do it because you're good at it. We're a church plant and you need to step in where you're good at it." So he was like, fine. And he would text me every week, "I hate doing this." And I was like, "Okay, thanks for serving," and like that was like, sometimes God is just calling you to do something and it's clear, like, I'm the one who has the skill or the ability, and it's a need that is there. And so that's You don't need to pray about that. Like there's nothing to pray about. So
I think
you
the
can
thing
pray
that I
that God
struggle with,
changes your heart, right? But
yeah, the thing that I struggle with is like if I'm going after an opportunity, and normally it's buying a building or buying a business or something like that, and I'm going too deep into analysis that I'm eventually I'm like, all right, I just need to talk to God about it. So I
yeah,
don't know whether that I should be praying, God, give me a sign if I should go after this, or if this is not in your will, put a stop to it. So,
yeah,
I think that's the one way is like if I pray, give me a sign and I miss the sign, well, then I miss an opportunity. But if
Yeah, I don't know that God always gives us signs. And
Mhm.
I heard a really good sermon about this 2 weeks ago. Uh, and he was talking about, I mean, basically he went back to Adam and Eve and like God's presence there, and he broke everything down, like Jesus at the cross, Jesus was present with us. And he said after that, it was talking about the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit was there at the beginning, creating everything, Genesis 1:1. And then all the way, the Holy Spirit was at the cross when Jesus died. And after that, after Jesus resurrected, the Holy Spirit came and he lives in us. So everybody has the Holy Spirit in them. So everybody's waiting for this opportunity for God. I'm going to sit here and wait for a sign for you to do something. God's inside of you. The Holy Spirit's inside of you. So maybe the answer lies within you. And so if you just sit there and sit in a chair and be like, I'm just going to, peace be still, like I'm just going to sit here and wait until you might be waiting for a very long time. God wants
yeah,
us to take action. Like there's no like he can give you winning lottery numbers. If you don't get up and go play them, like you're going to lose out. So,
Mm.
but if it was just interesting, like he broke down, I think it was like 5 different, he went all the way to Revelations, because it's like Revelation 26 or something like that has something in there about the Holy Spirit. It's kind of the end time, the way the Holy Spirit is. But it broke it down, the Holy Spirit throughout the whole thing. But
Hmm.
presently, the Holy Spirit is within you.
yeah. My wife and I are both really principled, like, and I don't mean like ethically principled, although I hope we are that way too. But I mean more like okay, this is what we're gonna do. So I'll give an example. This year, one of my goals is to get into short-term rentals, Airbnbs, vacation homes. So I put some feelers out to different networks that I have. Hey, does anybody know people who have Airbnbs that they want to sell and they're willing to do owner financing? And because that's another way that I really like to get real estate. And we got a potential opportunity in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. My wife and I don't really care to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but like we go to Hilton Head Island every year, and we go on a vacation with her parents every year, and so we're really blessed, to already have those opportunities. And so, if we were evaluating this as like, oh, this is our second home, vacation home, like that's a different question, right? But if this is a business investment and I want to get into short-term rentals in vacation areas, it doesn't matter if it's in Florida or South Carolina or Gatlinburg, in the mountains, or Asheville or whatever, or Colorado mountains or whatever. And so praying about and setting up the principles then gives you the freedom to act within those. And that's been really helpful for me with living my life. So, like, one of my goals that I prayed about was getting into short term rentals. And then I get to see the Lord provide what I was asking for. I don't know where it's going to be in the world. And I'm not saying there'd be anything wrong with somebody praying for a specific city, right? If that's what, your goal is, but then letting the Lord guide from there. So putting those principles in place can be, I think, really helpful for making those decisions.
What I really like about what you're saying is that you're using the prayer almost as like an indicator, even though God already knows, but you're saying, God, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take this step, and I'm just trusting that you're going to put the floor tile where my foot's going. And
Yeah.
instead of asking God which direction to go. And I think where I fall short of that is like I was outside reading the Bible. I just said for the week I'm going to dedicate more time to reading the Bible as I decide whether I'm going to buy this business. And so I'm sitting outside and I'm like, all right, God, if this is your will, then just have a bird fly down and come visit me. And I
Yeah.
sat up and I looked around and a bird flew over like 20 feet away, and I was like, that was it. That was the sign. And then I kind of doubted. I'm like,
There's 100 birds
there's
around
100
before you
birds
ask for prayer.
and I was like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
well, God, I'm gonna go for it. And if this is not your will, then stop me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the way that you're looking at it, and it's probably a lot more practical than what I'm doing.
So I have a tattoo idea that I'm trying to. I think I shared this with you, Ryan. The quote that I really like. It says, "When I stand before God at the end of my life, if there is, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left, and I could say I used everything you gave me." And so for me, like that's relating to like I want to use up everything in all of those. I don't know how to make that into an image and make it a tattoo. So if you have ideas, please tell me.
I have a
But
great one. So my
okay.
actually, since I was in elementary school, I've had like this poster, this picture of Roberto Clemente, and his quote that just says, "I just want to be remembered as a ball player that gave all he has to give." And
Okay.
so hearing you bring that up, I was like, I still have that hanging over my desk because it's my
Yeah.
favorite quote.
So get tattoo of
That's
Roberto
awesome.
Clemente.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Well, I don't know
So
about
then, but with that, then you can say, "Hey, here's the way I think God is calling me based on the interests He's given me, based on the talents He's giving me. Here's the direction I think He's calling me to go." Um, and then and then you can just pursue those. And they can be wherever or whatever. You can use your intellect and your business acumen to evaluate the business decisions. So, um, another thing, I don't get super attached to like the property that I buy as a rental property. So, there are some that I just have my property manager go by and look at. And if I've ran the numbers and I know the area of town and she's comfortable managing it, then and I have the money saved up for the down payment, like why would I not take the opportunity that's in front of me? And so then it just becomes less about like I'm not trying to take God out of it, like God's will, but like I believe God works through our circumstances a lot. And that house was available. I came across it. I had enough money for the down payment for that one. If it would have been priced differently, I might not have. Like all of the things kind of work together and make sense there. And it fits in line with what I believe God's called me to do, and invest in, and how I should act. And so then I can just step forward and trust the results to Him.
So along those same lines, you and I went back and forth for a while about another deal that kind of came to you, and you were looking at how's this fit in my long-term goals, and like kind of went by step, like how can I structure
Yeah.
this? How can we do all this stuff? And you
Yeah.
ended up walking away from the deal, and it could have been potentially lucrative deal. I mean, it would have double, triple, quadrupled your business
Uh-huh.
seemingly overnight.
Yeah.
Would
Very
have
quick.
broken a lot of systems and processes that you had. You basically had been rebuilding your whole company uh,
Hmm.
to handle that inflow. But you said, "Hey, this isn't what I want. This isn't. I don't want to be that person." And so, I mean, I think it's really admirable that you were able to. Hey, I take a profitable business and quadruple it overnight, but
Yeah.
it's not in my cards, if you will. I don't feel that it aligns with my purpose.
Yeah.
I'm kind of put words in your mouth, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so my wife and I prayed about it. The person who approached me prayed about it because he's a believer as well, and everybody was bathing it in prayer and trying to give clarity, to themselves and the whole situation. And we walked down the path of like, how would we, do this and work together and things like that. And honestly, if it really boiled down to we felt that our giving goals were what God had called us to, and if you have a partner in your business, they have a right to say where your profit goes. And so that meant that we would have to change our giving goals. And it meant that some of our family, or not some of my employees, that I had goals for them as far as where I want their revenue to be or how I want them to benefit from this company. All of those would have had to be reevaluated. And frankly, it just came down to a decision of it. It didn't there was not a reason to reevaluate those other than just to have a bigger business, so it didn't make sense with what we already felt pretty firm in. And that's what I think I'm talking about with principled. Like we already had, our principled ideas of what we wanted to give this year, and that would have had to have changed reasonably, like totally reasonable expectation for somebody buying into a business to expect that they would get the profit and I wouldn't keep giving it all away. You know, so um, it's no knock on them. Like I'm not criticizing anybody from it, but if you have those principles, it just makes it that much easier to make those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's
So the prayer was, God, are you calling me to change my giving goal for this year? Because if you're not, then I can't do this. And that's,
yeah, I think
that's what the question was about.
too many times people do get hung up in what's bigger and better, and chasing the things versus it's something we talk about before about having. I'm not a quote unquote goal person, like quarterly goals or like near term goals, something like that. But like I think more in the going back to your quote about the with the tattoo, like how do I get to that? Should be your ultimate goal. It's not. It doesn't follow the typical SMART goal acronym and all that stuff, but that's more for me long term goals.
Well, we talk about when you get to heaven, look, you don't want God to show you who you could have been.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Have you heard that saying that a person, hell is going to be people meeting the person that they could have been?
Mm.
You ever heard that? Like if
Mm.
they would have
I
followed
always say I
Christ?
don't want to get to heaven and meet the person I could have been. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
like a fear. So very similar, just coming at it from a
Yeah.
different angle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think if you have that vision and that goal, and you're aligned with your family, it makes those decisions a lot easier. Having the goals for the whole family. And like I said, I hate the word goals, so
Sure.
it's
Sure. Yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, like this house that we're looking at right now or under contract on, whatever, it's not it's not for a personal thing, so the goal is a business investment. And so that just makes it different all around for both me and my wife. And it allows you to not be emotionally attached. So you're emotionally attached to the goals that God gives you, but the details of them can work out in lots of different ways.
Mm. That's a good one. So how are you analyzing opportunities? Obviously, in the high interest rate environment, it's tough to make anything work. Most deals aren't cash flowing. So are you just only buying deals you can afford to do in all cash, or are you looking more at the tax incentives for being able to depreciate a property?
Yeah, so again, there's just so much freedom with that enough number, right? So as long as this breaks even, um, doesn't really matter because I'm looking at it to build wealth for the future. And so I'm not trying to get $100 a month or $500 a month out of it. So as long as it breaks even on the year and gives me some tax benefits, and builds wealth, it's a win. So again, it just kind of puts it in a different category if you're looking at your goals like that. So I have somebody I met with this morning, and they're thinking about retiring, and that we're looking through their budget and what their numbers are, and they're like, should we buy more rental property? And I was like, listen, I'm laser focused for you right now on your revenue number being at the number you want it to be at, so that you can pay your bills and you can live the lifestyle you want to live. Then after that, we'll talk about buying more real estate. Like, let's get, and just being really intentional about that focus and kind of direction is just so helpful, because they could get hung up on, well, should I buy a multifamily or single family or short term rental, or, what if I do private money lending or whatever like that? Like, there's all these things they can do with their cash. I'm like, we've got to get your number where it is first, and then you get to ask those questions. And it just really helps to have clear priorities like that. So for me on this one, it's a business investment. Um, we would I can't think of a scenario where we would like live in that house. Not because it's not a great house, like I'm really impressed with the house, but it's just not where we want to live in the country. And I don't think that, we would live there. We'll probably go there on vacation a couple times, throughout the next couple years. But yeah, just that clarity I think is really, really helpful, and what you want it for. So
So what I'm
I
hearing is that you're looking to take on the most debt possible to keep scaling your portfolio for it to just break even, cover its own expenses.
So yeah, I don't know that it's, I mean, the goal isn't debt, right? But like if that's, if that's where it is, I'm fine with that. So I'm actually putting 5% down on this house and their owner financing the rest of it. Um so it's a very good deal for me. And there may be a little cash flow there, but maybe not. And it's okay if there's not. So it will be just fine as long as we're building wealth, and then someday we can sell it and buy a different one that's in a place maybe we want to have a vacation home for our family a little more, or there's all kinds of options, but you've got to start there. And so
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm actually asking specifically for a couple clients that I have that um
You just have to charge you for this one.
I know. But I'm just kind of double checking the advice that I'm giving to them as I'm not a tax advisor, but um they have multiple paid off properties and they've lived very well off the cash flow, and they're at the point now where they don't need the cash flow anymore, so they're wanting to buy more multifamily. And I'm showing them the returns that they'll get from the benefits. And then, with them being retired, I'm like, I don't know how the process is for becoming a real estate professional, but I can show you that this depreciation is going to make you more than your cash flowing on all of those rest of those properties. So they're looking more at the, high leverage, just covering the own expenses. And they're like, as long as it has reserves, then I don't care how much it cash flows after that. And so
yeah.
just changing the strategy a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I have a client right now. Every year she buys 1 to 3 properties that do not cash flow. But she buys in stable markets where she's confident that the rent is going to increase. She's a broker, a real estate broker. So she's very confident in her assessment of the market, as she should be. And her goal is building wealth and saving on taxes, not cash flow. So if she has to absorb somewhere between 1,200 and 6 grand a year on each one of these properties, and then she saves 30 to 50,000 in tax bill at the end of the year, like, it's very reasonable for her, right? And she's building wealth in these things. Eventually, the rent's going to catch up with the payment. Eventually, the property value. I'm actually the one I'm putting 5% down on. I'm actually paying 35,000 more than asking, as well. Or I'm sorry, more than appraised value. Um, because I'm not paying any closing costs or commissions. I'm not paying any origination fees. It's owner finance. So to me, it's like, that's fine. If you want a little over asking, like, I'm still paying about what I would pay anyway. And so I think looking at the whole deal makes, a lot of sense. And if you have time to look at the long term because you don't need the cash flow, you are a much more powerful investor than somebody who is very worried about that cash flow right away.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've looked at for a while is if you're in real estate, if you have cash flow coming in elsewhere and you're in real estate for the long term financial benefits to you and your family, uh, then don't worry about cash flow. I find cash flow even harder and harder to get nowadays. And if people were sitting there and like, well, it doesn't cash flow, so I'm not going to buy it. Now you move to the top of the line of people that are willing to buy it,
That's
so
right.
it's only beneficial to you.
Yeah, yeah, it really can be. Regarding them, so the other thing, just to mention this because you brought it up about your clients, real estate professional status, if you have income that you are not deducting, is a detriment to real estate profession to your taxes, to be a real estate professional. So everybody always wants to be a real estate professional, and it's great if you have a loss that can offset other earned income. But if you are a real estate professional and you have earned income that you cannot get rid of on your tax return, you're paying income taxes and self-employment taxes on it. So you actually, for these people who are retired and aren't paying Social Security or income taxes, self-employment taxes on, not income, self-employment on their retirement, if they become a real estate professional, they have now become an active worker again. And so now that profit is subject to self-employment tax. So they've actually hurt themselves. So
No, interesting.
because they're paying an extra 15.6% roughly in Social Security taxes. Um, Also, if it's passive, typically, if they're on Social Security, that's not going to be an issue with the Social Security Administration. But if they become a real estate professional, it becomes earned income. And so then you're offsetting your Social Security, paying back $1 for every two, $1 for every three, depending on their whole scenario. So it can actually, I tell people all the time, you do not want to be a real estate professional. Like, it's going to hurt you tax wise. And there's really no, unless you're like doing that for your full-time job, like as an agent or something, there's really no other benefit other than the tax benefit of having that status.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's
There's
really good
just
to know.
liability. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and so what about for people that, regardless of whether they're retired or just working, full-time W-2 jobs, I know there's some kind of way to be an active participant in a short-term rental when their average stay is below 7 days. How do you advise on that loophole? I hate the word
yeah,
loophole, but
it is. No, short-term rental loophole. That's what you Google if you want to read about it. Short-term rental loophole. It's a wonderful loophole. It's one of my favorites for people to use. And I'll probably use it on this Airbnb thing if we end up going through with that. Um, but what you're doing is you're basically saying to the IRS, this is not a rental property, this is a business. I'm in the business of vacation rental. And so you move that from Schedule E, which is where you put rental properties, to Schedule C, which is where you put a business that you're in. And so then if your business has a loss, that was active work that lost money. So that gets to offset your W 2 income.
yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was that simple. So
Yeah, that's,
Well, there are some qualifications to how you qualify for it. So the biggest one is the two biggest, 7 days or less needs to be the average stay, and that's the average. So you could theoretically have a 30-day stay in there or a 2-week stay. It doesn't mean you can never go over. It just means your average on the year, the tax year, needs to be 7 days or less. And then, excuse me, you have to spend 100 hours on the business per year, and you have to spend more than any other one person. So, how do you do that if it's 10 hours away, like the one I'm going to do? You have a property management company that has a different maintenance guy, different cleaning people, different, for each thing. So, there's not any one other person that is spending more hours than you on it, even though the company as a whole might be spending more than you. And so, because the rule is that you need to be the person who's spending the most hours on
hmm. And
it.
then you can also take the depreciation against active income. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so then what's really powerful about this is you do that cost segregation that we talked about earlier, and you get all this bonus depreciation in the first year or two or five, whatever. And you take that against your active income. So if your spouse has a W 2 or if you have a W 2 from somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it sounds like the retired couple, the passive gains that they're going to get, or the capital gains that they'll get from increasing the value of these properties, probably makes sense to keep it in the passive bucket. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah, I
saying?
would say so because the gains from those properties that are paid off are income. But if they buy another one and they get this big deduction the first year or two or five, again, if we don't get back to bonus, then that's going to offset the gain from the other properties. But if they became active and there wasn't enough to offset, or after a couple years, if they're still a real estate professional, then they're going to be paying taxes on that. So, but if you keep it all in passive, you don't have Social Security against it, self-employment tax.
Right.
that's why it pays to have a strategist in your corner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I have a lot of people, we actually and I'm not trying to sell my services, but I'm really proud of this idea. I didn't come up with it. Somebody on the team did, but we do office hours every week. There's an hour that any client who's a monthly client can just log into Zoom, and we bring them in one at a time and we just answer questions like when they're, hey, I'm thinking about buying this short-term rental. How does that short-term rental loophole work? We just, go over it with them real quick and then send them on their way. And so it's been a really fun addition to our services because
And they
I
get
never know what
That's really
question
cool.
you get what 5 minutes or something like that, and then
15 up to 15.
up to
So
15 minutes. And
we
what's your
like people
time's
to
up?
keep it.
What's that?
What'd you say?
I would say, what's your time's up? Then it goes to the next person, but you can get back in line.
Yeah, you could get back in line. I mean, I've never cut anybody off, but most people are pretty respectful. A lot of people don't even need 15 minutes, honestly. They just want to check in about this question or two because we've talked about it before and they just want to make sure they got it right before they do it. So,
I'm sure most of the questions are, can I write off my toilet paper? And, home office, I'm using my kitchen, right?
yeah, we do hear some of those. We have some pretty good articles to send out for different, how things work and what you can write off and stuff like that. So,
I think the best advice that I'd ever been given is if you can look an IRS agent in the face and with a straight face tell him that you believe that should be a write-off, then go for it. If
yeah,
not, then don't even give it a try.
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that does make a lot of sense. I think sometimes I have some clients who are like, "Are you serious? I can actually write that off." I'm like, "Yeah, let's look at the code together, the IRS, make sure you qualify. We'll read through it." But um, there's a reason the IRS code is like 60,000 pages. They put a lot of loopholes in there. So yeah, so it's good to know those.
Hmm.
And another reason why you specialize is because you're not reading everything, you're reading the ones that pertain to you.
Exactly.
So
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, it's our I know I remember my exact question going back a little ways, but so your business is more set up on a recurring revenue model. You said your monthly clients, so you kind of
Right.
they pay a monthly fee or whatever, and then they can have access to you, and then you'll have quarterly strategy meetings as well, correct?
That's right. Yeah, it depends on your package. So the base packages include basically group type things and the office hours access, and then you can kind of have a higher level package that could include bookkeeping or one-on-one strategy meetings if your business is in a spot where one-on-one is probably better or you need longer than that 15 minutes. So, but I wanted to have something because I really think that entrepreneurship is very valuable and I want to encourage people to start businesses. So our base package is 297 a month. It includes your tax prep. It includes the group calls. It includes the office hours, and so it really helps that entrepreneurs starting out to be able to have something that they can utilize.
Yeah. So typically, unless you're doing your taxes yourself, you're not going to spend less than $1,000 or so for a CPA to
Right.
do it. So you're basically offering, just to do a round number, $3,500, which includes your tax prep and filings, I assume, and according to if I
Yeah.
understood. And then you get all the tax strategy questions. You can jump on and ask questions like that. So you could end up saving way north of the 3.5 grand or whatever it comes out to.
Oh yeah, you can definitely save, yeah, quite a bit. So that's we are batting 1,000 so far. We've never not saved people what we've billed them. Um, So yeah, or I should say, we've never not shown people the savings that I can't make people implement, right? But yeah,
Gotcha. So before we let you go, I got one question I wanna say I ask every guest, but I haven't asked anybody yet, but I kind of been wanting to ask, what does freedom mean to you? Like
yeah,
there's the world's open, like what's it mean? It means something to everybody else. What's it mean to you?
yeah. So I actually maybe phrase it a little bit different, but I talk about it as freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of like kind of the different areas of my life that are important. And so I think freedom really honestly comes down to choice. And do I have the ability to make the choice that I want right now? Or is there something in my life or in my circumstances that is limiting that? And so complete freedom, I don't think God designed us to have that, right? We can't fly. I would love to fly. I think it'd be really cool, but I can't. And so, in some ways we don't have complete freedom, and I think that's good and healthy for us. But for me, yeah, it's about choice. So um getting those ways where I can choose what is most important to me and what I want the most in those circumstances.
Cool. Anything follow up?
No, I don't want to ask too much tax advice. This is all educational.
I'm happy to share a little bit more. I got some time if you have some other questions.
Yeah, I know you're on lunchtime, so
Yeah, no, I do think it's important that people meet with someone who does talk the strategy, because I've worked with many CPAs before that just they'll tell you what boxes to put things in, but they won't really go over the planning side of it and how to best prepare. And I didn't realize that those were two different roles, because I've always been looking for something like I need someone to tell me like, hey, you made too much money this year. I need you to go buy a friggin' plane or something, you know?
but to that point though, this drives me nuts. Like, I have a friend, she has a graphic design company, and her accountant or whatever was like, "Oh, you made too much money. You need to go buy this new toilet paper that costs $10,000." Like, it's like it doesn't bring value back to the company. It's not
Right.
like a new product line. It's not enhancing her family in any way or something. And I'm
Mhm.
just making up some crazy thing,
Sure.
and it drives me nuts. Like, I understand spending money, but does the company need a new vehicle? Like, okay, let's go do that and buy a new vehicle. Can we, you know, open up a new product line if we invest in this and increase revenue next year? Like, I think that's you can go out and spend
Yeah.
whatever you want on whatever, but um,
Well, and I think you'll have a better answer to this than I do, but I've always been told, and through like 3 or 4 different CPAs, then just pay the taxes. Like sometimes it's better for you to just keep, 40 or 50%, or well, that's probably not accurate, but 50 or 60% of that money, and then just pay the 40% taxes. But if you can find a way to benefit the business, I would much rather add a vehicle to our business than give the IRS another paycheck.
I guess my point is a lot of accountants are just like go spend the money on frivolous things,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
go out to eat more, like
Now, what's the right answer?
So I would say, so I say two things. People say, "Oh, it's a write-off," and I always try to tell people a write-off is a 30 to 40% discount. That's the way you need to look at that. A write-off is not, I don't pay I don't pay anything for this. It's just a discount. So I say to people, when you're considering buying that, would you purchase that if someone offered you a 30% discount, but you got nothing else for it? Like, would you still buy it? And if the answer is no, then it's worth just paying the taxes, to your point, that you said. The thing that we do, I don't even tell people, if I shouldn't say never. Very seldom do I say something like spend some more on marketing. And if I do, it's not because I'm giving them tax strategy. It's because I'm trying to tell them to grow their business. And so for me, whether it's spend more on marketing or buy more pens or paper or ink, for your printer or whatever, I don't say those things very often because I'm looking for strategies that are either going to grow your business directly, provide owners benefits today, or build wealth for the future. And if it's not one of those three, it's not a good strategy for me to suggest.
and you can
If you spend more money on business things, you're going to get to write it off. Like, I don't need to tell you that. So,
and
yeah,
maybe it's taking the profit and buying a rental property or something, like it doesn't have
that's
to
right.
necessarily be directly to that, but
That's
go and
right.
lease a vehicle for 2 years just to get when you don't need a new vehicle. Um, I just that's what drives me nuts, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. What you really have to do though is you have to have those numbers on a monthly or a minimum quarterly basis so that you can see what your projections are going to be, so that you know what you need to do. Like the example you gave about just buy more toilet paper, and you were being facetious maybe, but um like that's a desperation play, right? Like that's a I got to do something right now. We don't operate that way because we're meeting with our clients regularly. So we're not in the desperation situation very often. Now, our clients are sometimes if they didn't listen to us fast enough, but we're not making suggestions like that. Oh my gosh, you have to do this today, unless you sign up with us maybe like December 27th or something, and then we have 4 days left in the year. But generally, we're looking at your numbers, we're making projections, and we're talking about what you need to do throughout the year.
One thing that I think would be helpful to clarify that I've had confusion about, every year December, people come and just start being crazy buying properties like, oh, I'm okay with overpaying because I don't want to have to pay taxes this year, and like, or someone sold a business and they want to redeploy those proceeds in December. I was always under the impression that if you buy a property in December, even if you do a cost sale, you can only use it for 1/12 of that year. Do I have that backwards?
So there is some, it is based on how long you've owned it that year. However, with the cost seg bonus, the bonus is not based on how long you've owned it. So um, it may be scenarios where they're doing 1031. They can place it in service right away. There's something they can accelerate. And then flippers and wholesalers will do things different ways as far as how they manage their inventory. And so they may need, because they claim their inventory expense the year it happens, not the year they sell. So they may, if you flipped a house and made 200 grand profit, you may need to buy two other $100,000 houses to offset that before the end of the year and keep that rolling forward. Um, Most of my clients, we don't do it that way. We don't claim the expense until the sale, and we just put it all on the same year when it sells. But there are other accountants and other flippers who, do that differently, and so that could be part of why.
Interesting. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I know like vehicles and stuff, you start if you buy it in June, you start in June.
Right.
So you take 7 months. But that's so you get 5 months of the next year or the
Unless you
last
do
year.
a 179, right?
Unless you do bonus through 179, and then you get, yeah. So with the last year that it was 100%, we bought our vehicle on December 29th, I think. And then I said I used it 100% for business the last 2 days of the year, which was true. Um, but it was very easy to then say 100% for business. And so then the full amount was deductible that year.
Yeah.
But if you buy it in January, it's very hard to say that there was never a time all year that you didn't run by the grocery or, stop at a gas station and get a Coke or something, that wasn't business related. So we purposely waited so that it was very easy to say this was 100% business. Very, very
A lot of people do that with Airbnbs as well. Going back to that, is they'll put it in service at the end of the year because now you can say, "Well, I got it ready to rent and all that
So
stuff."
my average
And so,
under,
so I did more than other people, but then yeah,
yeah.
that's
for that first year. Yeah.
it's the first year, and if you can bonus depreciate it, then even better.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many.
But you can't do that stuff on February 1st. It's too late, right? And so that's why it's helpful for those meetings throughout the year.
One of my favorite loopholes is the Augusta rule.
Mm.
Can you
Yeah, I
kind
like
of
that one.
go over that just because I find it funny?
Yeah, yeah. So it's named after Augusta National, the golf tournament. And the idea is that you can rent out your primary home for 14 days per year, and you don't have to claim the income on your taxes. So that part actually has nothing to do with your business. So, like, I live in Louisville, Kentucky. The Kentucky Derby is here. I have a lot of neighbors who rent out their home. They may make anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 for the week of Derby on their house. They don't claim any of it on their taxes because it's less than the 14 days. The extra added benefit for business owners is you can rent it to your business for business events, for employee events, for parties, for meetings, whatever. And then those things are deductible. They're deductible on your business. They're not income on you personally. So
Is that why your Christmas party was at your house?
that's exactly right. Yep.
I'm putting it all together now.
Yeah, that's
I
why I
love
was
seeing
there.
them fix in
So,
practice. Like, so,
yeah.
do you have your kids on payroll as well?
So we're just starting that this year. So there's some really good ways that you can use that. My son, we're starting that with him this year. Uh, so when your kids are younger, you can do an image and likeness agreement if you want to put them in your marketing material, and then you can pay them for that. There's different ways depending on what type of company you have, S corp versus single member LLC or partnership, who the owners are, as far as how you have to pay them and what taxes have to be withheld and all that stuff. But generally, you can pay your kids all of their income taxes. If you pay them 15,000 or less, and 25 would come back to you. If they're paid through some entities, they will pay into Social Security. Other ways they won't, depending on how your companies are set up. And then they have that money and it's earned income. And so they could invest that in a retirement account. They could pay for their own summer camp. They could pay for their own birthday party. They could do what they could pay to decorate their room. They could save it for a car, kind of whatever you want to use it for. So
And I think that's the best part of that whole tactic is, I mean, people don't realize how much we spend for our kids anyways. And so if you have a business, one, maxing out the Roth IRA, because you're basically doubling the impact that those dollars can have because they're post-tax
yeah,
dollars, right? And then the other side of it is if I'm buying my kids new schools or new clothes for school, I can pay them to do a task which they're already doing for my business. They come and help me sweep floors, they mow the lawn,
right.
they do stuff. I'm paying them with with money that I'm already paying taxes on. So instead, just paying them through the business, and then they can use those monies. And so one trick that we haven't put into practice yet, I don't know if I talked to you about it, but I really want to pay my kids and then get them on there's well, I can't remember what the charge card is, but it's like a credit
Green light.
building credit card.
Is it green light?
Yes, yep. And it basically teaches them responsible investing and just stocks and saving accounts and all the basics of it where you can monitor it on an app. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's monitored on an app, but we don't use it. I just have heard about it recently as well, and so I want to look into it as well. But
Yeah, I've never heard of. I mean, I'm sure I heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, one thing that we've done that we have actually put into practice is we got the older kids. So I think they have to be 13 or older. So we have two that are older than that, and then one that's 19. So she has all her own accounts. But we got them on a Venmo teen account, and so that we can pay them through Venmo, and then we just have to track it on the business side. So we have our Venmo account hooked up to QuickBooks and everything like that. So when we pay them, it sits in their account, and they have paper money stock accounts. So once they show us that they earn a certain percentage return, they're doing good with it. They can use their actual money to go put into we have a custodial account for them. So that's one thing that is kind of like another workaround. It's free.
cool. Yeah. Paying the kids is definitely a good loophole. I really, really like that one. So, and you said you have 7 kids,
Yeah.
so you max that out. That's what, around 100,000, give or take, that you could take out of your business to pay them. It would be tax free because it's a business deduction for you, and if you keep them under 15,000 each, then they don't have taxes on it. So
Right. Yeah. I mean,
then they
I
pay for their own.
haven't gotten this far with it, but even if I say like, hey, this, my oldest son is responsible for the light bill, and then my second, daughter is responsible for the groceries. It's like, I mean, essentially.
You have to be you do have to be careful going in that direction too much, because if you're not providing for at least 50% of their expenses, then they're not a dependent anymore. And so you definitely want to make sure that you can still claim them as a dependent and get the child tax credit. So yeah. So you just gotta kind of navigate that. So
Yeah, no, that's a good call.
My head's hurting already. So
I love this stuff. Like I could talk about this stuff all day, but
yeah, it's interesting, especially when it comes to kids. Does that work for grandkids as well? So
it does really. The rule actually is not related to, so as the business owner, you're paying a family member like down your family tree. And if they're under 15, if their total income's under 15, then they don't pay taxes on it. You always get to deduct money that you pay to people for work that they do as the business owner. So again, the nuance is really with how much they're making, right? So if your son was old enough to have a part-time job, you paid him 15 and then he made another, let's say 5, then he's filing a tax return and paying taxes on the amount over the standard deduction. So
yeah, very interesting.
yeah, like I said, I really enjoy this conversation, and I know that there's a lot of stuff. I love the kind corrections, because there's so many misconceptions out there, and I'm sure you love just seeing on social media all the gurus that give you the good ideas of how to avoid paying
yeah,
taxes. But we'll have to go in depth on that on another episode.
Yeah.
That could be a fun. I should try to figure out a way to do a video about that and just like evaluate a bunch of the gurus, like share the nuance that they're not sharing. So, about the
I've got a guy that I'll have to send you after we get off of this because he basically that's part of his marketing for his services is he just watches the videos, and so like in the video you'll see him on a phone, and then he'll sit up and give you the answer of either why they're an idiot or why they're actually onto something.
Is that Edward Verified?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just they didn't tell you the full story, or they are so much further ahead than you are
Mhm.
that it just doesn't apply. So the biggest one is when Pace Morby, you guys have heard of him, I'm sure, says, "I don't own anything. My trust owns everything." For most people, they're not in a spot where they need to do that, and so they try to set up these Wyoming LLCs and trusts, and they just don't have any use for them, and they've created extra financial burdens on themselves for doing it. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm one of them.
And you've
Yeah.
probably been like, "Oh, I have to do a tax return for this? What?"
Yeah. So it's always a catch-22, moving stuff around and
Uh-huh.
all that. So, but yeah, the way I did it was my Wyoming LLC it's just a holding company. So everything else is still held locally.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Well, that's not a big deal. Yeah.
yeah,
So just one extra return. So,
yeah. So, but yeah, it's tax drives me nuts. So it's yeah, I'm just thinking of all the tax things in my head.
You make your brain explode.
I'm kind of boggling, yeah. So, but this is why I tried to do everything when I first started. Like, CPA is expensive. Let me try to do that, and it just you don't know what you don't know, and in
yeah.
the long run, you're probably hurting yourself. Same thing with
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think especially like you mentioned, because they are business expenses, they're probably some of the best investments that you can make in your business because it's just stuff that in order to be even half decent at, you have to dedicate a lot of time to understanding this stuff. It's a
Yeah.
better use of my time to just pay someone, $5,000 to just tell me what the right answer is.
Yeah.
So I think people are too
I met with
stingy at it.
somebody today. I met with somebody today who was signing up with services with me. And she was like, "I don't want to understand why. I just want you to tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. Like, I don't want to know any of the why. Like, just tell me, say, do this and I'll do it. Like, that's it. I want to pay you to tell me what to do." So, and I mean, I do that with my coaches. I have business coaches for marketing and systems and processes and growth. And I think that's the best investment you can make as a guide for whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve in your business. So,
Uh, One final question for me. Say I'm looking for a tax strategist, and it's September. Is that too late in the year?
no, it depends on how fast you're gonna act, right? So, I mean, I've had people sign up end of October, beginning of November, and they're ready to go and get on the ball, and we're able to get a good amount of stress. Certainly, what they paid me in the year is definitely made back like a couple times over. But the later you wait in the year, you just run into life happens, right? Especially November and December is Thanksgiving and Christmas, and there's just a lot of time there that people don't want to be doing stuff for their business. And I totally get that. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And then there's other places that are closed and you can't do, what you want to do for certain days or limited staff or whatever. So, um, I heard a story about Grant Cardone. It was getting to the end of the year, and he was going to buy a plane for his business. Have you guys seen this video?
Mhm.
It was on. You've seen it, yeah. So the story goes, he needed to buy the plane by the end of the year, and he called them, and they were like, "Oh, we don't have any." And he called his assistant, and he was like, "Wire whatever company he was going to buy it from, wire them $10 million. I don't know the numbers, but some ridiculous number." And they called him back. They were like, "Nobody's ever prepaid. We'll get you the plane by the end of the year." So he was motivated enough for the tax savings that he was willing to, do it that way. And so if you're motivated and you have the ability to act, then I mean, December 1st is probably about as late as you would want to go.
All goes by your motivation level, though.
It does. Yeah. Your ability and your motivation level. Yep.
Well, not only did they have to find him a plane, deliver the plane, but also he had to put it in service and go fly it for
That's
what was
right.
like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
Yeah.
December 30th with I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So if someone wants to
Yep.
get a hold of you, either, just reach out and like what you talked about or looking for
Yeah.
tax advice, what's the best way to get a hold of Greg?
Yeah, so best way, my email's greg@taylortaxstrategy.com. That's a great way to get through to me. Our website is taylortaxstrategy.com.
And they will
Those are
retarget you if you go there.
oh yeah, you've been retargeted, haven't you? So if you fill out that form, you will get in our funnel. That is true.
Yeah.
So that is how we get our leads. So
Yeah.
that's definitely what would happen there. But yeah, probably email or just going to the website. So
Awesome.
and there's more about
Yeah,
there.
I
You
know
can
you got
find
like
us on
1,700
Facebook too.
questions. Sorry, what's that?
Oh, you can find us on Facebook too. So
I know you still got like 1,700 questions. You got anything you want
We'll keep going through tomorrow's lunch.
to?
No, I appreciate it. This is fun, and it's
yeah,
interesting to
absolutely.
hear a lot of the nuance, things that we probably had continuing misunderstandings of, or
Well, I offered you a ticket in June. Greg will be there.
I will. I'd love to meet you.
Absolutely
person.
looking forward to it.
So I
Yeah.
offered my other ticket to him. He hasn't jumped on it, so now I'm publicly shaming him.
Yeah.
Pressure's on. We're both going to be there.
All right.
so-
Well, we'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Greg. Appreciate it, and I'll see you here in a
Absolutely.
few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to come on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.